Well, Julia, it's always good to be with you. And, we're getting all these different headlines, scary headlines and then, wow, good headlines, right? Are we in a recession? Recession is here. And then, wow, record unemployment. The rate actually dropped coming out of the July jobs report. So how would you describe our current state of the economy, and specifically the jobs market?
Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Economists who study this for a living are even more confused than you are. And that's because many of the indicators that usually line up perfectly and that measure exactly the same phenomenon are wildly diverging at the moment. So you have GDP, gross domestic product, measuring one thing and showing pretty a gloomy outcome, and GDI, which measures exactly the same thing from the other side, showing something completely different. And every pair of indicators is doing that right now. They're more divergent than ever before. And so nobody really knows what's going on.
What are the outlying factors maybe that are creating this conundrum where we've got different readings, one being negative, one being positive? What would you say are some of the factors that are causing this?
Let's say that the jobs report number last month had come out at 1 million, right? A huge, even bigger number than it was. We could have told a really coherent story about why that was happening. The economy still is reopening in many, many industries, like in leisure and hospitality. Restaurants and hotels are still short about 1 million staff. Public schools are still short, 300,000 teachers. And they have lots and lots of cash. They're flush with cash. And so they're hiring, they're reopening. People are going back to work. Inflation is pushing people who are on the sidelines back into work. That story might have made sense. Companies are sitting on $4 trillion of cash. The S&P 500 companies on average have double-digit profits. There's a lot of good news out there. Most U.S. households are locked into low-rate mortgages. They have more savings in the bank than before. So there are lots of reasons to believe a very positive, optimistic story. On the other hand, we have this thing called inflation going on.
Yeah.
And when inflation rises like this, it can be very tough to get rid of it. And in past inflationary episodes, the Fed has actually had to raise interest rates above the rate of inflation to bring inflation down. That would mean 10% interest rates. What? Is that even possible? I mean, that would really, really throw cold water on the party. That would reduce household and business access to credit. That would stop spending. That would reduce hiring. And that would be kind of a Volcker-style recession. So there's huge uncertainty. We don't know which way this thing's going to go.
Well, I'm glad you said this because I wanted to ask you this. And I don't mind being wrong, but as I'm looking, and I'm not an economist, but as I'm just looking at all of the things that would drive inflation up, to me, it feels like inflation is going to be very stubborn because of the fact that we still have 11 plus million jobs available, somewhere in the neighborhood of just north of 8 million people unemployed, and people are still hiring. And it feels like to me that the increase in hourly and then salary wages is the greatest cause of inflation. And you've got Jerome Powell on record as saying, we're raising these interest rates because we want to see the employment market cool. And in the world you're in the world I'm in, I'm going, what? That doesn't make any sense. And it feels as though inflation is kind of here to stay right now in this hot job market. Am I right? Am I wrong? What am I missing?
So a lot of the factors that fueled inflation initially, the supply chain problems, the shipping costs, the bazillions of ships out on the coast of Long Beach there, unable to come into port, those have resolved or are in the process of resolving themselves. Shipping costs and trucking costs are coming way back down. The cost of commodities are falling. Gasoline prices have been doing pretty well lately, the last few weeks. So there are some reasons for optimism. Of course, yes, that core inflation piece that you're talking about, that's more tied to wage growth, that's way above where it should be right now. And that is more stubborn and much more difficult to move. We have had a period since this pandemic of far fewer workers right? A much lower labor force participation, a lot of cash sloshing around in the economy. The last time I looked at federal outlays, I think for the last quarter it was 5.2 trillion, up from 3.9 trillion the last quarter before the pandemic. So there's still a lot more money being pumped into this economy. Every time I turn on the radio, there are ads for companies that'll help you get, $26,000 per employee, that employee retention credit that's still available. And the ad is really explicit. You can get it whether or not you lost sales during the pandemic.
That's correct.
So I'm hearing of companies getting free money all the time, millions of dollars that they're using to buy new trucks and new warehouses. So there is still a lot of money falling from helicopters at the very same time that the Fed is trying to vacuum it all up. And that's kind of, could undermine their effectiveness.
Yeah.
At the same time, people's inflation expectations show that they're expecting inflation to come back down. And cooling conditions abroad could mean slower, softer demand. We could get that miracle, that soft landing, where the Fed only needs to raise interest rates, a bit, and not for too long, to bring inflation down. If that happens, you're gonna have a whole lot of companies sitting there saying, wow, stocks are way undervalued in that case. We're sitting on a lot of cash. We can go forward, invest higher, and you'll see this rocket ship take off.